Yeah. So climate change is racist now. Somehow. When you hear stuff like this, it really makes you start wondering, do they have a mental disorder? Are they just slow in the brain? I've come to realize that they are all of these things because there's no way you could consider climate change being racist. Considering climate change doesn't really have a thought process of who it affects at all, but of course, the mental insane people are obviously going to call it a racist thing when it's literally impossible. Pathetic. Just I don't know how to really deal with this, considering that it causes damage to the brain. Really, every thought process that you would have immediately goes down the drain as you say climate is racist, and apparently they love it. Global heating study shows impact of climate racism in U.S. Oh God. New study says that black people living in most cities are subject to double the level of heat stress as their white counterparts. The researchers say the differences were not explained by poverty, but by historic racism and segregation. As a result, people of color more generally live in areas with fewer green spaces and more buildings and roads. As does everybody else. And also, how does that even equate to actual racism? Where people are not actually racist. It doesn't contribute to racism at all. I mean, a good example is go look at Africa or go look at any place in what's that place called, like Australia. I mean, that place gets blazing hot as well, and there is also black people there, including in Africa. And for you great morons, it gets incredibly hot there, and there's hardly any shade there. Of course, Africa is not always completely run down third world country, but it does get hot there, as it does get hot in Australia, as it gets hot in any other country. So I don't know where you're gonna get this. Are you gonna call Canadians racist, considering that all they live in is pretty much mostly just cold weather because they're in Canada and it gets incredibly cold there? Or what about the people in Alaska where it gets like -10 over there? Are those people racist because it gets super cold in certain parts of that area? No, because that's ridiculous. That's retarded to even possibly think like that. Oh, God. These impacts of raising temperatures and changing a climate. It doesn't. You can't, just because where you live, it does not change how it's hot there. That makes no bloody sense. You can't change the heat. That's literally impossible. You cannot change the heat where you live. That is literally oh my God. Cities are well-known magnifiers of a warmer climate. The surface urban heat island effect is a technical term for the impact that the buildings, roads, and infrastructure of cities have on temperatures. All that concrete and asphalt attracts and stores more heat, ensuring that both days and nights in the big urban areas are much warmer than surrounding locations. Yeah, if there's like no trees, but that doesn't mean it's hotter there at all. I mean, you can literally be in an ice chamber and it would and you had asphalt, and the freaking asphalt would be cold. Like that doesn't mean anything. What? All that concrete and asphalt. Okay, already. But within cities, there are often large differences in this heat island impact, which areas which rich in trees and green spaces noticeably cooler than those that are dense with housing and industry. What? If a house is towering over the said sun, then there is shade like there would be with trees. No shit, would it be cooler? What? That's just retarded thinking. Of course, it would be cooler when there would be trees or with any type of housing because there's shade there and you would be cold. Shade provides cool more coolness because it's blocking the sun. Oh my god. A previous study in the U.S. found a correlation between warmer neighborhoods in big cities with racist housing practices dating back to the 1930s. Back then, areas with large African or immigrant populations were redlined in documents by federal officials and deemed too hazardous for home loans and investment. This led to a concentration of poverty and low home ownership rates in some parts of big cities. Where white people would also be affected because not every person over a white person is rich. Hello? This new study takes a broad look at these warmer neighborhoods and the people who are affected by them. Using satellite temperature data combined with demographic information from the U.S. Census, the authors found that the average person of color lives in an area with far higher summer daytime temperatures than non-Hispanic white people. For the purpose of the paper, the scientists are defining people of color as including all Hispanic people, regardless of race, and anyone who does not identify as white alone. In all but 6 of the 175 largest urbanized areas in the continental U.S., people of color endure much greater heat impacts in summer. For black people, this is particularly stark. The researchers say they are exposed to an extra 3.112 of heating on average in urban neighborhoods compared to an extra 1.4 for what? Why does that matter? You do realize the reason why black people are black, right? Because they are usually more exposed to the sun. Or more resistant to heat anyway, so why would that even matter? And first off, where are these people living? Because you're not actually specifying where these people are living at all. If they're living in certain parts of California, yeah, I live in California and it gets incredibly hot here. Apparently this weekend it's supposed to be 107 plus heat. So yeah, it gets really hot here, especially in some areas. And then in Texas, yeah, it also gets incredibly hot there. Depending where you live, it will be hot or cooler. So I do not understand this racist narrative because it doesn't make any bloody sense. You can live in Antarctica and you got a whole group of people, black people, being in Antarctica, and it would be cold. But is it racist for them living there because it's incredibly cold there? No, because you're living in a very cold area where black people choose to live. That is by easily where you would be either attracted to heat or not. It's not. It doesn't. This doesn't just affect black people. This affects everyone. Yeah, people are actually insane. Exposure to heat not only leads to increased mortality, it is also connected to a range of impacts, including heat stroke, loss of productivity in work, and impaired learning. Oh, okay. How is it impaired learning? What? Our study helps to provide more quantitative evidence that climate racism, environmental racism exists. Dr. Angel, who's from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the lead author of the paper. And it's not just an isolated incident, it's pervasive all across the United States. Yes, Africa people live in a very hot area. And there's most likely more black people in Africa than there is black people in the States. While being poor was certainly a factor for exposure to increased urban heat in the summer, it didn't provide a full explanation. In around half the cities, the average person of color faced higher summertime heat than people living below the poverty line, even though just 10% of people of color were classed as poor. The root causes of these differences can be found in history, say experts. We can trace many of these present-day environmental, socio-economic, and health equities to explicit decisions and urban policies in the 20th century, like redlining, said Jeremy Hoffman, the chief scientist at the Science Museum of Virginia, who is not involved in this new study. Well, obviously he's not involved because he's obviously not racist, and he's obviously not a freaking psychopath. While money doesn't grow on trees, it is clearly located in the neighborhoods under them, especially in the U.S. With temperatures likely to increase due to global heating over the coming decades, this is a problem that is likely to get worse without significant input from the state and federal government, as President Biden has promised. Solutions, though, need to be carefully thought out. In the paper, the authors reflected on the fact that the planting trees in heat-stressed areas can reduce summer temperatures by 1.5 Celsius, which is good for residents. But the new trees can also increase property values, and these house price effects can end up displacing the minority residents of the places we decide to help. As our society emerges from the pandemic, which show that these very same communities that are hard during the summer are also those suffering the largest impacts from COVID-19, it's essential that we ensure we are centering them in our recovery, Dr. Hoffman said. But if decisions are made over these neighborhoods without the intentional input guidance of citizens who live there, it's not any better in theory than the practice of redoing any other nefarious planning process in the past. No. This is retarded. Because there's a whole bunch of people living in hotter areas than, in general. And when people are living in hotter areas, yes, it's going to affect them differently. There's not a lot of black people in, I would say, California, other than you would say Oakland, which has a very huge amount of people being there. Oakland is majority black people. And then you have people also living in San Francisco that it also gets incredibly hot. So it depends. It literally depends on where you live. And yeah, trees does reduce heat, but it doesn't reduce it enough to actually really make a difference. Heat is not racist. You can't get racism from heat because it all depends on where you actually legitimately live. And from what I noticed from the majority of the states, it gets really cold in a lot of the states, especially in like hot places like Colorado and Alaska. So this is just ridiculous, guys. I do not understand what they're even trying to say. Yeah, sure, maybe black people are in more hotter areas, but that's probably going to happen with another race. You wouldn't be speaking about this if it was happening with white people. So you have to obviously make a point where black people are being affected. Also, I need to see the stats for this as well and what places they're living at, because we're also not saying you guys are not saying anything where they're actually living at. You're just saying, oh, well, they're just more heat, and where the black people are living. Okay, well then show where they're living, and show which actual city or state that they're actually getting all this heat from, because that's what makes sense. Now, if you're saying if they're getting more heat and maybe in a colder area, okay, but even still, that wouldn't be racism, because climate change or climate in general does not determine whether you're black or a Jew or whatever the hell your race is, because it doesn't care. Like, it didn't care about the freaking dinosaurs because it apparently decided to wipe them out. So, yeah. You people are psychopaths. Actually, psychopaths. You're always constantly talking about race this and race that, and always trying to divide the country. Well, can't wait, you guys, to go to hell. That's it for the video, guys. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and hopefully I see you guys in a next retarded video that does not have to deal with climate racism.